People, hip hop is 50 this year. 50. The big 50. Where does that and education intertwine on the other side?
Welcome, everybody. You have been tapped into the South Star Classroom family. I don't know why Charles is laughing at me, but I'm okay with it.
Because you disappeared as soon as you started the intro?
I don't know why that happens. My Wi-Fi works all day, and then when we get on the South Star Classroom, it wants to try to act up, but we are going to move forward. Welcome to episode 110. Today we are talking about Hip Hop 50. Well, one, saluting it, and two, figuring out its impact or discussing its impact on education for Black and Brown students. You heard? So before we begin, I'm throwing it to you all. How are you doing? Let's check in. Omar, what's good?
Man, we're talking about hip hop. I want to know everybody's top five. You got a high five. If you haven't seen Chris Rock's movie, High Five, it's a good-ass movie that's based completely in hip-hop culture, talking about everybody's, top five. Everyone's going to have to end the show with their top five. Yo, man, listen, I am a very gracious is the wrong word. I am in a state of gratitude to be able to do this show. We've been dealing with some pretty serious things here in El Paso, particularly DPLA. It has not been the best last 2 weeks for me or my organization. But we press on, we survive. We are agents of our own accord. Isn't that right, Doc? And as the doctor sips on that delicious yak, tasting the sweet grapey goodness that is cognac, my father's favorite drink, by the way. I'm just in a period where I get to chill out for an hour, talk about hip hop and education, and be with three of my favorite people. So in that respect, I'm very happy that I'm going to put it out to everybody. Everybody in the show better give me that top five, man. And it better be a good ass top five.
Are you asking for artists or albums?
Oh, artists, not albums. Okay. You can give me albums later, but I want artists. Yeah, man. Dude, I can't wait to hear David. So David was a DJ and is steep. Dude, he and I got into a conversation about punk rock, and he just started telling me not only did he see all these insane early 80s punk rock bands, but went to those shows. He lived it. If y'all lived some of these things, we have to share an anecdote or two on the show.
Sure.
If you're yo, I saw Rock Him in 1987, no.
I was there, man.
You were, man, you were there. You were there in the Bronx the minute that they hit those beats. You knew the Sugar Hill Gang by name.
I saw your pics, David. What's going on with you? Go ahead and check in.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm back home. We had a quick 4-day family trip to New York City. We like to go every year. It's one of our. I think it's our favorite city in the U.S. for sure. And every trip is different. This time it was just the three of us, my wife and our son. And we went for this festival, the Italian festival, San Gennaro. And it's basically just Italian food going crazy. We stayed near Italy.
The festival of The Godfather where everyone gets shot?
Pretty much, yeah. There's body bags everywhere. And we, so it was great. It was good to see the city. The city seems to be healthy, very vibrant as always. It's always a trip to leave, and you come back here somewhere and you're like, where is everybody? Because just the density of New York City is so intense. But yeah, we come back somewhere and you're like, where? Sorry. There we go. But part of our trip this time was pre-planned, with the 50th anniversary. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today. And I don't like to do touristy things. I'm grumpy. I'm I don't know those people. I don't want to be on a bus with them. But we did do a hip hop tour. And I'll share a little bit more about it later, but we were able to go to some very historic spots, like part of American history, where hip hop actually started. The actual club room where the first DJ set, the DJ Kool Herc. Oh, I'm getting ahead. Sorry, threw down. Anyhow,
all right.
yeah, excited to dive in. Good to be here.
Awesome. Good to have you. What's up, Doc?
What's up, man?
The only thing I'm missing is the carrot. What show
The
is
carrot.
that from?
You talking about Bugs Bunny?
Yeah, man, she's talking about that
That is-
funny shit.
that
man.
is
She's talking
terrible.
about rabbit
That is-
season and
I
duck
made it
season and shit.
funny.
She's
That is-
Elmer fudding it up.
That-
Man, look
Ooh.
at David. David's like,
She-
damn.
She is taking dad jokes to a terrible, terrible depth. My Lord. I'm good. I'm tired. I went back home to Oakland last week. It was cool to be back there, even though Oakland is on fire right now. I mean, it's all kind of crime. I actually have met Shane, the new mayor. I like her as a person. I think she's struggling right now, man. Like, I watched her throw her city organizer just under a Mack truck. Oakland missed out on this huge grant, and she just was like, "Yeah, that's the city administrator's job. Talk to him." I was like, "Damn, I don't think you're supposed to do it like that." But I like her, and I'm praying for my city. I want to see her be successful.
Hey.
Listen, man. Listen, I put it like
No,
this.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the mayor of that city manager.
I mean,
man.
but that's what I'm saying. I think she's just new and young, and it's just hard. You know what I'm saying? And like them cameras is bright when everybody on your head. And I went to Oakland, was there, and then from there I went to Connecticut, trained 20 some odd parents around the Agentic Black. The Agentic Black Parent ebook. It was really, 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 really good. Got a lot of testimonials from there, and then got back yesterday or the day before. I don't remember. I'm tired. And then I'm here this week, and then I leave again. And the public will not know where I'm going until I return, like on this trip. So that is. But I'm very happy for this hip hop conversation. Me and Jube is rocking it, both rocking the hip hop glasses, which I did get in Brooklyn. So I am, Brooklyn has some really dope glasses. So that's how I'm doing, Jube.
I love it. I love that you just shouted out my city too. So and Dave, you did. Oh, look at that.
I see it. There you go.
Omar.
There you go.
Omar, you got
Omar can't see. You got glasses on. Omar got glasses on.
I mean, he does, but what else you got, Omar? Like, we didn't. Don't worry, guys. We didn't keep him out the group chat. He just been busy handling a lot of.
As somebody who used to wear glasses until he had LASIK last year, which I should have did earlier, the brother can't see without him. I mean, he can squint. He can be Mr. Magoo today, but like,
okay. Well, we don't want him to be Mr. Magoo.
He got glasses on, man.
Omar,
you got the Lupe Fiasco glasses, brother.
You look great, Omar. Your beard is bearded, and your hair is amazing.
The hair is always herring, man. The hair is always
the
herring.
hair is always herring.
I need these glasses, man. I should have had them since college. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I did like David wearing his Highway to the Danger Zone.
I think you should keep
glasses,
them on.
man.
I think they should.
Me too. I love it.
This man lives in San Diego. He's got that Miramar glasses on, man. Like he's about to jump on a motorcycle and play.
Yeah.
Give us a glasses. Come on, give us a
probably
glasses,
more
man.
appropriate for the Top Gun show, right?
No, those are perfect. I love it.
Because you know why those are appropriate? Because hip hop is 50. What kind of glasses do 50-year-olds got a little change in their pocket, done seen some stuff, done grew out of some things? They wear them kind of glasses. You feel me?
Yes.
Those like the glasses of somebody who can rent a boat. So yes, wear them glasses.
You know what? You better be a motivational speaker, Charles. You better go ahead. All right, let's get into today's topic. I'm excited about this, right? And Dave kind of, shared a little bit. So I'm just, laying some groundwork, which we all, I'm sure, already know. And to share a couple of stats, and then we're getting into the convo. So birth in New York City, right? The Bronx, to be exact, where David just was, right? August 11th, 1973. Clive Campbell and DJ Kool Herc and his sister Cindy Campbell reportedly hosted a back-to-school party from the recreational room of 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. Shout out to my BX people. Usually Brooklyn people and BX people, we have a little bit of an issue because like the Bronx is so far from Brooklyn. But for today, it's just we're just showing love to everybody. We're showing love to everybody. It's fine. But that is the place where hip hop started 50 years ago. And so there were so many celebrations this year. There were celebrations everywhere, particularly in New York City. Rappers and artists and singers came from all over the globe to commemorate this huge milestone. And so I looked up a couple of stats, Nielsen Music being one of them, said hip hop officially became the most popular music genre in 2018 and continued to reign on year after year after year. And I'm sure if I dug a little deeper, I'd find some stats that have said that, you know, hip hop has been that genre. According to the 2021 Coleman Media Insights Music Super Study, hip hop and R&B is more prominent among consumers between the ages of 12 and 34, mostly men. 70% of Black listeners from urban and suburban areas have hip hop and R&B in their top 100 songs. 30% of Hispanic listeners from urban and suburban areas have hip hop and R&B in their top 100 songs. And hip hop and R&B have been kind of, you know, categorized together. All right. And so some examples, right, of what this looks like on the education side, right? In Pasadena, California, right, we have a teacher by the name of Manuel Rustin, who's a social studies teacher, a high school teacher, who uses rap songs to get students to make meaning of current events. I know my screen popped out again, sorry. Through a course entitled Urban Culture and Society. We got a Frederick Douglass Academy in Detroit. A teacher by the name of Quan Nellums has students search the lyrics of their favorite rap songs for college level vocabulary and references to key events and concepts for American history. And we got a teacher named Cassie Krim, a high school teacher in Illinois, who introduced herself to her advanced algebra students in 2017 through a rap video. Using a rendition of Cardi B's Bodak Yellow, she called it Kodak Yellow, and referenced math terms and laid down some classroom expectations. All right, so those are three examples of how hip hop has been infused in education, right? And so my first question to you is, what impact has hip hop had on the academic achievement and motivation of Black and Brown students over the past 50 years? And you can share initial reactions to the stats that I just read.
I mean, personally, when I think of just hip hop, like, I know there are people that incorporate it into stuff, into curriculum and things like that, but that's not where my brain goes. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of that stuff can get really cheesy and corny, to just be real with you. I think a lot of it can feel very try hard, but for me, hip hop was a germane part of my culture. It just was like, culturally speaking, it was just there. It's there in how I dress and how I talk, and just it was kind of this rebellious type spirit, which is really interesting with this current time we in, around like super being politically correct and things like that. Like, hip hop was never necessarily that, so it's interesting. But maybe all 50-year-olds, tamp down a little bit as they age. But for me, the way hip hop played a role into my education, or just into education around the people that I know, it helped me cope and was a vessel for me to deal with things in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think, I remember listening to DMX's "It's Dark and Hell Is Hot" and Eminem during that time. Those are kind of the two first dudes that I heard like have some emotions and deal with them in like some kind of interesting way, right? Like as David has talked about before, right, with punk rock. Like, I'm not a punk rocker, right? But I assume the way punk rock took that angst, or Nirvana took a lot of people's angst, right? Like, I didn't learn about Nirvana till I was a lot older. That's what hip hop was there for me, to take that angst, or that, the things that I'm annoyed with, or that passion of a Tupac or something like that. So I think hip hop has been one of the biggest modes of expression for a generation, especially a generation of men, a generation of boys that wasn't really taught how to channel that energy in positive ways, or in ways where it gets out of you. So even if the lyrics are aggressive and it's a mirror to what's happening outside, a la NWA, it still was a way to get that stuff out and I've seen those things used in therapy, right? So, for me, that's kind of where I see hip hop as opposed to, hey, I'm the cool hip teacher that's about to do this this lesson in hippity hop. Rhyme these things. I think that's the most corny shit in the world, personally. Yes. I'm sure it's been done well, but most of the time it's mad corny.
It's like Saturday Night Live has done, like Lin-Manuel Miranda had like a skit where he was making fun of that substitute teacher, where he's like, who's a poet? Shakespeare was a rapper, and Tupac is a poet, and everyone's like, boo.
Lin-Manuel, man.
It was.
Can I say while you're there, I appreciate Lin-Manuel. I would say he's very talented. I think that play was the corniest shit I had ever seen in my. I'm gonna stop right there.
Hamilton?
Which one?
I think Hamilton is the corniest thing ever. And listen, most of my friends like it. Brian Stanley and his family love it. They got the soundtrack. They do everything with it. So I love that you're
just like, hey, listen, man, I got friends who like
They love it. They love it. They love it. And
I thought I was going to be the grumpy one on the show.
I get it because he got kids. Because you can take kids to it and you can do whatever. It's the corny. I like real rap. I like real hip hop. Lin-Manuel Miranda is not a rapper. It can finish your thing, brother. I'm sorry. Let me put this in.
Fun fact, though.
I like you going off, man.
Quick fun fact. I met Lin-Manuel Miranda in 2005 in Scotland at the Fringe Festival before.
That's the bougiest shit I've ever.
Oh, the Fringe Festival.
That was a flex. She tried to flex on us.
This is before Broadway. He still actually runs it though. So if you do go to New York again, any of you, I recommend it if he's still running it. Freestyle Love Supreme. Do you ever hear that group? That was the group that he founded, musical group. They would and very much influenced by hip hop. But basically he would do audience participation. People would throw names in a hat and they would take whatever they put in a hat and make a song out of it or make a rap out of it.
You mean like the dueling pianos or like
the
Upright Citizens Brigade?
It was so dope. It's one of the dopest things I've ever seen. And they were on stage in Scotland, where my grand aunt lives. My grand aunt lives in Scotland. Thank you for bougie. My family is, in the UK.
Hey man, I'm celebrating your success and your bougie.
Anyway, it was a great time, and that was just a fun fact. So he's a hip hop head, and so I know you thought Hamilton was corny, but I do think he has a really uncanny way of like merging these worlds and making you want to listen to music and facts. Okay.
I want to.
I jumped in on Omar. I don't know if you got.
Omar, go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
Before I so rudely interrupted you.
Take a shot, man. There ain't no rudely interrupted. So this is a show. This is what the people want.
Having a conversation. I would say I think I agree. I mean I've taught hip hop in the classroom, in the high school in East Oakland, but it's challenging because and even for somebody like me that I grew up with hip hop culture, right? I was like a product of hip hop culture. But from the experience that we had from the 80s to the 2010s or 2000s, it's so different. It moves from like a culture of hip hop to just like rap music, right? And so they're two, they have a lot of similarities, but it's also very different. So I think the most important thing there that teachers or people can do is just simply to recognize, even if you don't like the music, even if you don't like what they're rapping about, it's still an American art form. And I think, the other thing I wanted to say is that the power, I don't know about the power of the music to change or like shift lives, but, especially for young men, Black and brown men, when it seems like not a whole lot of people are speaking to us, a lot of us felt heard and listened to by listening to rap, right? Because nobody else was telling us the things that we were hearing from hip hop and rap music, right? Our parents weren't, our communities weren't, our teachers definitely weren't. So I think there's a power there in connection, and that's like the power of like having the headphones in and sitting and just like listening to music, because you're actually like it's a real connection, you know. So I think those are the two things I wanted to put out there before we dive in.
I got a question though, because you made me think of something. It's like, do you feel like there was a time where the culture was influencing the music, and that there possibly was a shift to where now the music is influencing the culture?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I will say quickly. I think the two things. I mean, music is, you can't separate music from culture. You can't separate culture from music. Even when hip hop began, it was like a mix, a combination of all these different forces, right? That happened in one particular point in time in New York City. But in terms of the trajectory of hip hop, I would say I would say like the people talk about the golden era, right? The 1990s of when there was definitely like a positive messaging coming out of hip hop that was impacting culture, or maybe culture was impacting hip hop, but it was definitely a very different time. The music sounded different, the lyrics sounded different. It was like native tongues. It was like, you know, recognizing that African Americans have roots in Africa, recognizing like culture, and the messaging was just totally different. I feel like that was probably the one time where those two things were kind of working together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say lately the culture's being deeply influenced by hip hop. But if we go back historically, which like I'm a nerd and I'd love to do, if you look at like what was going on in the 1970s at the advent of hip hop, like this is a time of where children from the civil rights movement, people from the civil rights movement were not only having children, but they were in the malaise of the 1970s. All right. Like 68 destroyed everybody. Like, I mean, honestly, like we talk about it a lot, but I don't think people understand like the gravity of what happened in like 63 when Kennedy was assassinated, 64 when King was assassinated, when Malcolm X was assassinated, when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. I mean, Jesus, dude, the list goes on and on and on, right? Of like the FBI destroying the Black Panther movement. So you had all of this happening in the 60s, right? The 70s was this like malaise of like, what do we do now? Now all of a sudden, like, you know, you've got Nixon coming into office after LBJ, the entire punk movement essentially starting from scratch in New York, by the way. Punk started with the Ramones, fight me on it, unless you want to credit Iggy Pop and Stooges with their advent in the 1970s from Detroit, which, by the way, like any punk aficionado can tell you, like Iggy Pop and the Stooges started creating this. It was the Ramones who basically took it, mainstreamed it. And this was about anti-establishment, right? If you look at hip hop wasn't just about questioning the establishment. It was about bringing things to light that the establishment and the government was doing, particularly to Black people, to low-income people, to people that mainstream America has completely forgotten about, and bringing those ideas to the forefront in the advent of discussion. So, like, look, I love.
But I don't think it was that when it started. It wasn't that when it started. When it started, it was much more raw. It was like
no.
Party going,
about bringing people together.
Well, this is coming from
together, right?
Well, dude, hip hop started from, of all things, fucking shit. Why am I losing my head right now? From fucking disco, man. Like you want to get into the roots of this shit? That's where it started. Hip hop started from disco music, all right? And that's where the records came from. That's where the two turntables came from. And essentially, if you want to get into like the advent of the music, sure. But I'm getting into like what was going on in those areas of the country where people needed both escapism, but voice as well. And that voice really did start coming out in the 1980s. So like, I think a ton about like Public Enemy. Like Public Enemy for me was that like introduction into like, dude, these cats are talking about some very serious shit. Letter from the Government, Black Steel and Hours of Chaos, Fight the Power. I mean, come on, man. Like those are three songs everybody knows, everybody should know. Like they become so mainstream, they're playing in restaurants these days. But those discussions are really about like the tumult of a reality in which a group of people have been neglected for years. They're still being neglected, and what are we going to do about it? So when you ask the question, how does hip hop transform into education? To me, it's really about just discovering the history that has been concealed purposely by our textbooks in this country, that both hip hop and people like Howard Zinn have exposed to children that they should know about. Yeah, man, like I don't think people in this country knows where hip hop was born or why or what the circumstances revolving around it or why they needed two turntables to begin with.
I mean, that all of that's cool. It's real technical, right? And so I hear what you're saying in terms of, you know, the reason and the purpose. And I mean, the question that I have from that is like, was the purpose accomplished? You know, whatever it was established for, right? Was it accomplished? And
it's a good ass question.
Is that still the reason today, right? I holds, right? And then to the person that's like, yo, y'all over here trying to, you know, idolize this music and make it seem like it was just, you know, so important. But all it really taught was Black and brown kids to be violent and aggressive, right? Listen to this stat from an Emory University study, right? It is believed that many males who listen to rap music are viewed to have more violent tendencies compared to those who don't listen to rap music. This includes being more disrespectful and aggressive towards women in general. A study from Emory University concluded those teens between the age of 14 to 18 who listen to music roughly around 14 hours a week were 3 times more likely to get in a fight with a teacher or a peer, 2.5 times more likely to find themselves getting arrested, and 1.5 times more likely to partake in illegal activities such as underage drinking and experimenting with drugs, including getting sexually transmitted diseases. So
who wants to let me unleash this rage of fury on this bumbleclot study, dude? Like, if you want me to start talking about selection bias, like you want me to get on the phone with Emory University and be like, let me take a look at this sample. Because what you're essentially saying is Black people are getting disproportionately arrested in the United States.
Right.
No shit.
Right, but they're saying it's because of the music. Charles, what do you say?
Well, I mean, I think it's what came first, the chicken or the egg. I agree. I agree with Omar. Listen, man, I think that, you know, there's a difference between causation and correlation. I think, and it could potentially be a false equivalency, right? Could it be possible that people that tended to start making hip hop tended to be Black and they tended to live in poor communities where it was already crime infested and things were happening and it was already a nature of violence there? I think that's what it is. And to be fair, are there some people who are highly influential and probably listen to some stuff and was able to be influenced by music? Absolutely. I think both can happen. I think that there are some very influential rappers now. I just always hated the fact that rap tended to get a brunt of that blame, and then people might give that claim while they're walking into an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he's about to kill 800 people, which I also loved, right? Like maybe I just got a penchant to be violent, who knows? But I mean, we can debate that all day. The point is that there wasn't a place where people had voice. Like I always appreciate these. There are people I appreciate as I get older. Bob Dylan. I appreciate Bob Dylan's pen and what he did. But Bob Dylan wasn't what I was listening to in my speakers at 15. Maybe I should have. I didn't have David around me to be like, try this. You know what I mean? But I think music has always touched people in a certain kind of way. Oh, and now that we know that Jubilee's mom is here, I will definitely try to curse a lot less, Miss Hanson.
My mom is Jamaican. So when Omar said Bumba Clot,
when Omar was appropriating that culture just then, shit! Look, the next segment, he gonna have a lock wig. Don't do it, Omar. But
well, man, listen, man. I ain't throwing up the Rastafarian flags in my
oh my God! If you wear a Rasta wig, I'm gonna sing "Three Little Birds" by Bob Marley.
We're not gonna do none of that.
It's a dope ass song, but I got no reason.
Listen,
I love that song.
When David, jump in and say this, please.
I think
a better word.
I'm gonna try
a better word.
People,
I can talk about.
Go ahead.
I can talk about the technical aspects of hip hop all day and how.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the technical aspects of that word for a second. And I'm like,
no. But I just looked something up, and it reminded me of, I think, Jubilee's first question, which was around the other thing about hip hop is that it can be, you don't have to like be the teacher that like raps or teaches chemistry through, like having kids write raps about chemistry or the periodic table, but like hip hop is an American art form, and you can study American U.S. history by studying hip hop, and so because it gets caught up in all these moments of time, like in the late '80s, early '90s, was it Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, right? She was kind of one of the major forces behind the parental lyrics, parental advisory label that got slapped on a lot of music. And it wasn't a hip hop song. It wasn't a hip hop song. It was Prince. It was "Darling Nikki," which is suggestive lyrics, right?
It needed it. They played on the. They used to play it on the radio too, with unedited.
I'm not gonna sing it. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, and then you got these guys from like Miami to Live Crew, and it's like, okay, all right. So, but then, so hip hop gets caught up in the culture war, right, around what's considered decent or not. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is like if you look at globally, hip hop now is like I don't even know how many $1 billion industry, right? In this country alone, it's upwards of like, I think 60 or 70. I mean, it's huge. It's a massive global industry, right? That started in one place on one date in 1973 in a small clubhouse in the Bronx, right? It didn't exist before that. And now you fast forward 50 years and it's a global industry. And along the way, what you could also look at if you are working in education is to look at it from, through a capitalistic lens, right? What happens when people finally realize, oh shit, we can make money off of this, right? Because that's where we are now, right? So once the financial interests start to, push into whatever art form or cultural element, then it starts to take on a life of its own, right? It's no longer about doing things that are good for the community. That's where you see the split between hip hop and rap music and hip hop and rap culture, right? Anybody can make a rap song, anybody can make a hip hop song, anybody can market it, anybody can sell it. But that's where you see the divergence of the two, where it's like hip hop culture, rap culture, these are things that people live by versus whatever the private market wants to do and sell and what they want to support. And right now, we know what they are leaning, they want to support what sells. I think at least in this country, 70% of rap music sales are white males, right? And so they are pushing, I don't know if call it an agenda, but they're pushing music and a culture that does not shed positive light on African American culture, right? It's and people are buying it, and so they're going to continue to push it, right? And so you can use it as a teaching tool to understand things like capitalism, how markets work, a whole bunch of things. I think it's really fascinating. I think we haven't, you see it in, you can have like hip hop classes in college now, right? People are offering these like history, sociology.
Lupe Fiasco, I think, is at Columbia, or he's up there somewhere.
Right, exactly.
It's one of the more
popular
classes.
I'm like, we need to bring this down into the high school, into the middle school. To it could be part of ethnic studies. It could be part of U.S. history. One of the four elements of hip hop. The four elements of hip hop are DJing, are the MC, rapping, graffiti, which we haven't even touched on, and then breakdancing. Right? Breakdancing is going to be in the Olympics. It has made it into the Olympics.
Turbo, and T-Boz from Electric Boogaloo to breaking to the revenge.
Somebody from Germany or the Philippines is gonna win though, but
exactly, probably Amsterdam, yeah. But I mean, that's where we're at. It's crazy, right? We can't. We have
the cats from breaking.
We should be. It needs to be incorporated into education in some way, shape, or form. So I mean, that's where we're at in this moment.
Well,
And I don't think we ever said
Charles
it though.
said that's corny. He said that's corny.
Well, I said the way that a lot of people do it in those classrooms are
Yeah.
corny. It can be done well. I also said that, but I also want to just make sure, you know, there's a litmus test when you talk about hip hop that you got to do. When you talk about, it's 4 elements of hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
There is the MCN, but there's DJing, breaking, and graffiti. Like it's all of those things. And I would say, you know, the offshoots, the dotted lines is like fashion. The dotted lines is entrepreneurship. Like all these things. I don't run.
Spirituality.
I don't run shows like this without hip hop. I'm not an entrepreneur without hip hop, right? Those are the places where I got those lessons about, get your money, get your bread. What does that look like? You know, there's ways to do this. I turn a 5 to 10, 10 to 20 type deal, right? So I didn't mean to cut you off, Jude, but I wanted to make sure. But what is corny, and I will stand on that square.
With you, so it's fine.
I will stand. No, but you done did it, so I'm gonna stand.
Don't be talking shit about Ozone and Turbo. Don't be talking shit.
No, they was great.
Man.
They was great. They was great. They was great. What I'm saying is there are a lot of people that's trying to. All I can think of is that white lady doing the hip hop video, the hip hop dance. You got to be extra hip hop with it, and I'm gonna find that video and I'm gonna play it because this is what it reminds me of. Yes, it's the funniest shit ever. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Jubilee's mom. It's the funniest stuff ever.
Trust me, my mom is okay.
It's all good.
Well, look, let me ask you.
Let me ask you about a lot of things. Omar, are we gonna say something?
Yeah, I got a quick question that I hope you guys can interlay because it's a great discussion about like the chicken or the egg, like the culture, or how hip hop has affected the culture, and it interlaces kind of with the questions that you had about like, you know, traditional educational norms. How's it had an impact on like Black and brown students? So I tend to think about like John Singleton, right? And like all those movies in the 1990s, granted, like we look back at that now and we're like, Black culture had so much more to do than what was going on in the urban centers. However, if we look back at the time and the place and realize that like NWA was talking about things that no musical genre was talking about. John Singleton in these movies were exposing things that are happening in our urban centers that had never been exposed to mainstream America. Like, I think back, and even though it wasn't the best movie, Cedric the Entertainer had one of the best monologues I'd ever seen in any movie ever when he was in the movie Be Cool. And he was talking to John Travolta about the pervasiveness of hip hop and Black culture. And he's sitting there being like, look, you can sit here and look disparaging on me and everything else done and the fact that I got a degree from Wharton. But like, I want you to kick back and think about how pervasive Black culture and hip hop culture has led to the dominance of culture in the United States. The dress, the thoughts, the lyrics, the attitudes, white kids dressing like us, white kids talking like us, white kids buying our records. All these things put, whether it was positive or negative, Black culture into the conversation, all right, in a way that I think was so pervasive, we yet have really to begin to think about the ramifications of such things, right? Like if you look back at the civil rights movement, the minute that what was being done in the streets of Alabama and Mississippi were being broadcast on national television was the moment that Americans as a whole started being like, holy shit, we got to get involved and do something about this. Yet kids growing up with this pervasive level of understanding and culture, like, again, for better or for worse, what's dope about it, in my opinion, was that like we got to see a bit of ourselves, right? Like if all on the radio was like, you know, I don't know, in the 1970s and shit, like Rush and Journey and like Cool, all those cats. And like, yeah, in the 80s, like we had Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, and those were big deals to us because those were Black artists that got into mainstream world with songs, styles, and music from a world that we didn't really know because we didn't grow up with it. Like hip hop became the catalyst for these like conversations to start happening, for kids to be aware of these things, for kids to have a greater understanding of these, at least to be exposed. And I think the exposure itself has led to a greater level of motivation and academic achievement for kids, particularly from Black and brown communities, because I feel like the first time that they were heard and they were seen. And like it's exposed us to issues like what are we doing to bring more Black and brown teachers into the classroom? What are we doing to bring more Black and brown like leaders of the NBA? And I mean, look, like you talk about like kids wanting to be rap artists, and that's cool and all. But I think the conversation has led much more in depth into like, why aren't Black and brown kids running banks? Why aren't Black and brown kids running boardrooms? Why aren't more Black and brown kids becoming the CEOs? Like, how is Jay-Z and Michael Jordan taking financial steps of ownership and taking a rightful place in ownership where it has been denied to Black and brown people, and pushing these conversations out to the forefront? So like, I'm all about the positiveness of it. And like, granted, look, man, like we could have a long, fun conversation about the 90s and Diddy and like the extreme affluence and like talking about having a good time and the Benjamins and all that shit. And I'm all
That's
about
the late
it, and
90s.
it's
That's
fun.
the late 90s, man.
That's one of my favorite
Right.
songs.
Right.
Well, let's roll it
Yeah.
back just a little bit, right? 'Cause there's a lot there, right? And so you've got my brain going around just the level of influence, right? And that you talk about pervasiveness, and it makes me think about like, is it the genre or is it the visibility of the genre, right? So if we keep pressing rewind and we go from the 90s to the 80s to the 70s, back to the 60s, 50s,
Damn,
40s,
that's a
30s,
good ass
20s,
show.
like, what is it that causes, you know, Black and brown, and we could talk about the white people another time, but what is it that caused Black and brown children, students, men, women to gravitate towards this genre of music? Because there were other genres of music that existed prior to this. So what was it, or what is it about this genre? Is this the first time that a Black and brown person feels like they've been seen or heard or connect with music?
Well, we can't speak for all Black, brown people. And
I mean, you can't, but
I would add white people into it, because white people tend to be one of the largest consumers of hip hop globally. Like, it's
Right,
part of
but
the reason that it's such a. I'm just saying in general, right? Because everybody gravitated to it in a different kind of way, and I think the reason you got so much backlash is because white people started to gravitate to it. I think if it would have just stayed. Like, the blues was a mostly Black thing, but they didn't march against the blues in the same way that they marched against hip hop. They stole parts of the blues, but it wasn't like, oh, my kid, I'm a senator and my kid is up here talking about selling dope. Like, no, get this shit out of here. Like, so I actually think that does kind of matter. And when you look at concerts, it's a lot of white faces on the Blackest artists, right? Public Enemy do a show right now, it's going to be mostly white people. Right, like, so I did, but I think what you're saying is, I mean, for me, it sounded good. It was something different, you know. And I'm still a part of that generation where your parents they was R&B ish, right? But their childhood wasn't littered with rap. It was littered with still disco and R&B and stuff like that, right? But when they started to see, there was a connection tissue of like, I think this is my song. And they like, that's Donna Summer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a Donna Summer song from when I was a kid that people they done did this thing to. What it was the ethos of poverty. It was taking a little bit of something and reinventing it and making it something new. It was, you might not know how to play traditional instruments, but if you got these turntables, you can manipulate this sound and you can do this thing. And I'm talking about things the way that I want to talk about it. Like, there's one thing, Marvin Gaye is Marvin Gaye, and his pen is beautiful. And I actually wish our R&B took a trip back to talking in that type of prose and that type of poeticism, right? But hip hop was like, I'm just saying this shit. It's crack. That's a dope fiend right there. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like, and I love you and the flowers and that, and which I think is dope as well. You get what I'm saying? So I do think for a lot of people it was being seen. For a lot of people, it was freedom inside of like a place of oppression where you felt bottled up. And it was also flipping the script. It was the same thing, and this could be a whole different show. And my brown brothers do not comment on this, but it's somewhat the same argument around the word nigga, where it was like this thing that was hurtful and hateful and this, that, and the third, and was completely taken and flipped in endearment. So now I'm no longer ashamed to live in Watts. It is a badge of honor to live in Watts. It's a badge of honor to live in Oakland or Chicago, where the murder rate or the murder capital is whatever, right? So now you got people that live in the suburbs with, both parents and two-story houses and two-car garages, jealous that they don't live in pre-gentrified Brooklyn, which is crazy, right? Like, so that's the power of hip hop and the power of music. Yep. And I just think that Black kids and brown kids and just youth in general have always been the arbiters of coolness, the arbiters of what is fly and what is dope. And so, I think that's really what it was, because you made poverty fly, you made the ghetto fly, you made murder fly, you made and for the conscious rappers, you made talking smart shit fly. You made revolution fly, Public Enemy. You know what I'm saying? Like, Common, you talking poetic stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, in fur coats in Chicago, and your mom getting robbed on a riverboat type deal, right? Like, it's a real song. So I think it's all those things, Jubilee. Like, it is a cacophony of just so many elements of our lives that have been frowned upon and that we've hated, and they made you not just respect it, but love it and want to be there. So millions of people are flocking to Brooklyn to go see Jay-Z's exhibit, The Book of Hov, which I went to go see, right? Like, so it has that type of power.
Yeah.
Can you fly on a plane?
Dave, go ahead and weigh in, Dave.
I think for me, right, my entry point to it was just being at the right time at the right place. So I think, like most music, like, our parents, our elders, our caregivers, whatever, they pass down information to us in the form of music, in the form of food, in the form of traditions, and it's culture, right? Hip hop didn't exist, so when it came into being, it just so happened to exist in the neighborhood, in the area, in the schools that I was growing up in, right? And I'm talking about like the early '80s, right? Like, I was part of an interesting time in, like, not just music, because music is part of larger culture, where these things were like all very brand new, right? And we didn't call it hip hop; we used to call it electro. Like 1982, 83, Planet Rock, right, by Afrika Bambaataa, right, was the big song. And we in middle school, like, we were breakdancers. I was part of a breakdancing crew called the Masonic Breakers.
No,
we would like break in between class. We got like a 5-minute break, and we have like
got that cardboard.
Oh, for sure, all of it, man, all of it.
Him and Jean-Claude Van Damme were trying out for the breaking crew.
Not Jean-Claude Van Damme.
You're dating.
He was in the original Breaking, trying to get into the Breaking circle.
That movie was whack. The best breakdancing movie is Beat Street. So,
you said Beat Street. For the record, Beat Street. David has spoke. He said Beat Street is the best breaking movie. So go check.
Breakdancing movie, yeah, best culture movie. I never got with the West Coast Boogaloo stuff, even though I was from the West Coast. But anyways, the entry point was like, that was just like the music. That was what was happening. It was all very new. People really didn't understand what was happening. But again, like, understanding this stuff through a historical lens, the song Planet Rock is very interesting. Now looking back on it, you understand they actually took and sampled a German band by the name of Kraftwerk, who did a song called Trans-Euro Express from the 1970s, right? Another interesting piece about Planet Rock was that it was produced by a guy named Arthur Baker, right? He was like a Jewish music producer in New York City, and he's like, I got this song, I want to do this concept record to kind of cross the bridge between rap and electro and disco, and I need some guys to like rap on it. And he's asking people if they know anybody, and sure enough, somebody turned him on to Afrika Bambaataa. He had the lyrics written already. He just gave it to them, and then one afternoon they recorded this one song in New York City that like blew up the whole genre. This one song literally took it worldwide. So I think we can talk about, the cultural elements of it, but I love like sitting back and looking at this from a historical lens to see all the different forces that were in play back then. It's quite fascinating. Just thinking about how these things can be taught, even like the idea of the sound system, which Kool Herc, he was from Jamaica, right? Mm-hmm. And the concept of the sound system goes back to the 1950s in Jamaica, where they created sound systems where they would play American R&B music, right? Rhythm and blues. So you can keep going back and peel back the layers of the onion. I think it's fascinating, especially, as a history teacher and as somebody who's grew up in the culture of hip hop, because you can start to see how actually hip hop didn't start in 1973 in the Bronx.
Right.
It actually has roots, and you can see how like we're all connected going back down the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then you got to talk about Jamaica. You got to talk about James Brown. You got to talk about I mean, it's a whole bunch of people. Like Little Richard was going to be Little Richard in whatever time he was born in, right? Like that attitude, that freeness, right? Can I just say that when we talk about like Manuel, right? This is just like, I just want you to know what I picture when we talk about that dude, because I mean, this is just,
and that's what makes it look
that's
like
just
hip-hop.
what I see.
What this is with hip hop is everything's down low. It all is in a plie. I think the first thing you need to know about hip hop,
tell us where it's at.
It's all about your posture. And
teach us hip hop, white lady.
My posture was really bad. My mom used to tell me all the time.
You better teach us.
Stand up straight. Stand up straight. Well, you know what? I was standing up straight. Hip hop is this.
You got it.
1.
Oh, that's hip hop right there.
3, 4, hit.
What B Street know about that, Dave?
The more relaxed.
It's more jazz, but okay.
What B Street know about that, bro? You know what I'm saying?
That's first of all.
Every time I watch Hamilton, that's what I see.
Everything is
That's
terrible.
foul. That's foul.
Hilarious. So listen,
to quote my man, that is hilarious.
Joker. Charles, you know what? I know you took that lady class as a tutorial. Now you want to try to drag her.
Exactly. That's exactly.
All right. So I'm a black kid. I actually want to go to the most in danger, right? I'm a black boy who can't stand school. I don't like school. I never want to.
That was me. So continue.
Okay, cool. I can't stand school, right? How can hip hop, right? Not in a corny way that Charles referred to earlier, right? But how can hip hop be used to engage and connect with students who may feel disconnected or disengaged from traditional educational approaches? Because this is my 5 cents on this. As I told y'all this is my 20th year. I have seen hip hop and the use of it in classrooms really, really connect more with Black boys than anybody else. And I mean, in a way where they are motivated to come to school and to enter into a classroom, which in many ways could seem like a threat depending on their previous experiences with classroom teachers, with schools, with school to prison pipeline, treatment, with suspensions, with whatever, home life. So that's my 2 cents. So I'm curious to know what you all think.
I think it's just more around like it's. I think less than a lesson and less than trying to do it that way. I think it has pillars in it that if you can incorporate certain ways that like learning in ciphers, or the way in which you learn, or the room for improvisation, or like being able. But there's just hip hop just gives you permission to be authentic to what it is, however it is that you're feeling and what you're doing. And again, but I think every generation got music that's supposed to piss off their parents. I think that it's just that's just how it goes. Like Elvis, people hated that their daughters liked Elvis. You get what I'm saying? Like it just is what it is. I think it's around having that space of authenticity. I think what hip hop it introduced a level of real talk, a level of like, let me tell you kind of how this is. And even Michael Jordan, even though Michael Jordan, I think, was the greatest basketball player of all time, he's like the beginning of like that hip hop culture, which would later go off the charts with Allen Iverson, who I think was the full embodiment of that. But it is where you see yourself reflected, looking a certain type of way and being able to be successful. So I think in schools, I think it's just an attitude. Let me just also say, the best teacher I had that didn't incorporate it with hip hop, but he was hip hop in the improvisation and being able to be authentic. It was a white biker dude who introduced us to Pink Floyd. He introduced us to Lord of the Flies. And he wasn't trying to be us. What he was saying, what he saw was there was this music that had us in a chokehold. Yeah. And he was like, I'm gonna listen to what you like if you give what I like a shot. And then it's like, wait, I didn't know Pink Floyd was talking that shit. I didn't know Pink Floyd was dope. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love Money, the song, like the album, like I love Pink Floyd to this day because that dude, it hit the hip hop nature of the classroom that he had, allowed me to be authentically me and him to be authentically him. And we had a cultural exchange. And I think that's what actual hip hop is. Like when you see Santana do shit with Lauryn Hill, and it's like, this is the greatest shit I've ever heard. Like, I love Santana. Carlos Santana to me is up there with the Jay-Z for me. I love when I heard him with the Fugees, and I heard him with when they did Maria Maria, or I heard him with Lauryn Hill or whatever. It's like I went and looked at everything Santana did, right? Like, and it's a lot of cats. He's not a hip hop cat per se.
Everywhere in El Paso,
that is how you do it, by being authentically you, not trying
down
to.
Their love for you right now, Doc. I mean, El Paso would love themselves some Santana, man. As my uncle would say, Santana would give you the shirt off of his back.
All right. So we've got 6 minutes left. Let's shift to niche notes. And today's niche notes can be connected to our topic about hip hop and connecting with Black and Brown students, or it could be whatever's on your heart and mind that you want to share to your specific target audience if you have one. So let's start with Dave. What's on your mind? What do you want to share? What jewels?
Yeah, I think connected to the topic for sure. I would say, you know, if you are in, and even you know, even in today's world, if you're 10 years older than the students that you teach, you know, working in a high school, like, it's a generational shift, right? So I would say, and if you are from a background that is different, if you're a white educator working in a Black or a brown community, the easiest thing you can do, right, is number one, you know, in the work of like identifying and recognizing the humanity in your children and the students that you're working with, is like recognize that their music is their music. It's part of their culture, right? It might not be your music, might not be of your culture. You might not like the way it sounds. That's irrelevant. You have to take it for what it is. It is something that they are carrying with them, something that they are bringing into the school, and it's part of their lives. And so I think, you know, non-negotiable is just accept it. It's part of the culture. You can learn from it for sure. The second piece is like, don't fake it, right? We've seen this backfire so many times on so many different levels for educators that may not be from the same communities that their students are from. We're talking about music. Like, you need to listen a lot more than you need to like, you know, talk or preach or teach. I think that's a good starting point. There's a lot to be learned. I mean, I dated myself already. I listen to all kinds of music. I listen to new music, you know, that my son listens to, and I try and find something good in all of it. So I think those are my niche notes. That's what I got to offer for today's show. Thank you, Jubilee. Absolutely.
Thank you. Omar, what you got?
I mean, I got a lot. My shit's kind of scattered. I'll break it down to this, which is that I think the core element about hip hop, which is very similar to why I love punk music, is that kids are always in a mind frame of, you, the adult, don't understand me. You don't understand what I'm going through. You don't understand the difficulties that we have. You're outdated. Things are easy for you. Kids will perpetually have the ideology of, you don't understand me. And what I think is so pervasive about hip hop culture is that it's so blatantly, we get you. The entirety of hip hop culture is, we see you, we get you, and like, let me tell you what's really going on. So just a quick rant to go back. I think the reason that hip hop got so pervasive, especially in the 90s, is that after the like cocaine fueled happiness of, we want to escape the malaise of the 1970s that happened in the 80s, you had that very interesting emo hit in the early 90s that like brought upon grunge and Nirvana. And we want truth. We want reality. We don't want you to mask it behind, oh, Mickey, you're so fine, and like a charlatan of a president and Ronald Reagan. And in the 90s, you had a very pervasive history of like the anti-hero raising to like all-time status. So you saw it in rap, you saw it with Nirvana, you saw it in professional wrestling with folks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. All that is to say that what kids crave is the truth. They don't want to be bullshitted to. And in hip hop culture, the idea of exposing the truth and reality to demonstrate that you're not insane, things are happening according to like societal precepts or the government or other things that have so much of a like massive control on your life that you can't understand it, is what fuels the energy for kids to feel damn, like there's something out there that is interesting me and I feel like I could do something about it. How that quickly translates to you as a teacher. And I talk about like, Howard Zinn a whole lot, lies that my history teacher, lies that my teacher told me a lot, but really it should be in like, where is Toni Morrison in our schools? Where is Zora Neale Hurston in our schools? Where is James Baldwin in our schools? And just like I think Doc got exposed to Pink Floyd, I personally think that everyone should be exposed to these kinds of literary giants to basically help kids understand not only do we see you, but there's a truth. And if you dig deep enough to find it, you are going to find an agency to establish purpose and change, not just for yourself, but for your community and everyone around you. And that to me is the essence of hip hop. Not only can we expose the issues, not only can we talk about them, but we can collectively find a way to try to solve them. I'm an optimist. I know my man Doc is a nihilist. I know that he's out there like reading Bret Easton Ellis and being like, I'm done with this here world, but I am still an optimist. I'm still trying to make the world a better place. And hip hop is the facet for learning how to try to be anti-establishment enough to learn enough about the establishment to work collectively towards changing it. That's my niche for today.
Thank you so much. All right, Doc, what you got?
Well, you can skip me on niche because I know we ran out of time, and I know we still wanted to do the top
good
5.
Ass show, man. It's a good.
I got so dark. I need to turn the light on. So hold on.
Okay. Well, you can't just stop the thing. So you want us to go? God. Let's do top 5. Let's. She's like, just wait a second. David, what is your top 5, brother?
A top 5 what? What are we doing?
Top 5 rappers of all time, man. I asked everybody a challenge. I want to hear your top 5. Who's in your top 5?
I'm not going to do rappers. I'll do like groups. How about that?
Do yours. You do whatever you want.
Do whatever
it's your top
you want,
5.
man. It's your time.
All right. Oh my gosh, this is hard. I'd say I'll start with Tupac, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say in terms of groups, I would say De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, for sure. Jungle Brothers, for sure. Mike G. And then going back to individual rappers, I'd say Nas and Common.
I love your age. I love your Asian era. I know exactly when you were running the streets. Absolutely.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, God.
Doc, who got at the top 5? Oh,
so
Jubu,
mine.
You want to go?
Oh, go ahead, Jube. Go ahead, Jube. I'll go out to Jube.
I don't got my list yet. I'm still thinking. Go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Doc.
Hey,
I got you. So with these, I've done these so much. Like Tupac and Big are they're just in a different tier. They don't. It's just not fair to compare. Like for a bunch of reasons. I don't want to make people chase ghosts. So outside of that, Nas, who also turned 50 this year and just released another album a few days ago on his 50th birthday, and it is beautiful and it's incredible. He just gave you 6 albums in 2 years, by the way, and they're all great. With a young cat named Hit Boy, so he got one of these young dudes to give him some beats. But Nas, Eminem, Jay-Z, that's kind of my 3 that's always in the top. They shuffle positions. And then I would say Andre 3000 from Outkast, and my 5th is Ships, and it's usually a dance between DMX and Lupe Fiasco. And Lupe Fiasco also put out a new song this week, and I actually live a few blocks away from the high school he went to. But I think between those two, for different reasons, that is my top 5. And I would say if I needed to have a sister in there, the only reason she's not listed, she would be 5, is because she don't put out albums. She don't put out rap albums. And the one she did was so good that she's still in top list, and that's Lauryn Hill. L Boogie is, I think, the dopest is one of the dopest to pick up a microphone, not of women, but one of the dopest ever. So that's what I would say.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, I'll take a bit from you. And like Tupac and Biggie is always, I think, on everybody's top 5 list. So if we can put them into a different genre,
not this new group, not this new generation. People that's
no, but
30 and under, they're like, I don't like them people. They're like, they don't think they're that dope. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, man, they were absolutely revolutionary for the time, as Jay-Z is revolutionary for the time. And like, you could talk about your top 5 all the time, but you got to pay respects to all the folks that came before you. I think beyond those cats, like Tribe Called Quest has always been like absolutely fundamentally one of the greatest agents of that jazz infusion into hip hop that I absolutely adore. Yeah, man, love that shit. I personally, man, like Digital Underground, I could sing every song to every lyric on Sex Packets, man. Like that was one of the most fundamental like CDs, tapes for me, tapes. We dating ourselves and shit.
Well, and we get no Tupac without them. So
we get no Tupac without Digital Underground, man. And like again, it was about the music and the flow as opposed to the message. I think beyond those cats, man, like Wu-Tang, bringing together the group of MCs that the Wu-Tang did is usually unheard of. Like to have all those cats together to develop something, I thought was also revolutionary at the time, to be like, this is more about a collective vibe, about what we're bringing together as a group, as opposed to like what we're doing individually, because all those cats could stand alone individually, like for the most part. I mean, maybe like maybe some of them.
Wu-Tang was also interesting because it changed the landscape of beat making, right? With the way that the beats were produced.
Yeah, RZA is just different.
The RZA, and then also just the whole framework of the Wu-Tang and like crossing the you know like the Asiatic themes, right? And that's like the spirituality element, one of the 5th or 6th elements of hip hop. They were definitely game changers.
Also, black people just love kung fu movies. Like black people my dad's age just love like my pop's age. They just love kung fu movies all day.
Man, like hey man, Dolomite tried to do that kung fu shit in all of the movies, man.
Blaxploitation took it, baby.
Yes, it's super dope, man.
But finish your list. Go ahead,
beyond that, just like Outkast, because I mean, come on now.
Outkast.
And then I gotta give a lot of respect, man. Like I love Eminem, dude. I grew up like in the 90s, in the late 90s, man, and like the cat's unbelievable, dude. Like as a lyricist, as someone who can manipulate words, it's unbelievable what he could do, man.
He is somebody that he looks at the genre like a sport. He is like
an athlete. Good call.
And like him and Jay-Z, like on Renegade, like it's like, oh, we're athletes. We need to like he cares about his craft anyway. I know people try to hate on Eminem these days, and they be like, black people don't listen to Eminem. I am a black person that listens to a lot of Eminem. I love him. I will say it and rep it hard.
I mean, I love it, man. All right, man. I try to give enough time for Jubilee. Jubilee, you got.
I know, man. Jubilee knew this was coming. She knew it was coming.
Don't try to blame me. I'll just
Jubilee got up in the middle of when she was supposed to be speaking to go turn on the light. It was like, can y'all wait?
I just felt like I was melting. Like
that was the most hip hop shit of all time. She just dropped the microphone. She's like, I'm old and tired of this shit.
Like she went in full princess mode. Like everybody, just wait a minute.
Just hold on, because I can't see.
Come on, Princess Drew.
No, the most hip hop habit of ever is to rap and then put the mic to the audience and tell them to finish the lyrics. Like that's how you know you made it. Listen. Anyhow, even though the people like, well, we don't want to say the lyrics. We paid to see you say them, so you say them and leave us alone.
Come on, Princess.
Okay, all right. Don't rush me now. After y'all took y'all 12 minutes.
Princess,
no.
You are the princess. That's all let's do it right for the princess. This is Princess Jubilee. Go ahead. We got you. Go ahead.
So
stop the whole joint.
I had to turn my light on. I just couldn't do it. Okay. Anyway, so y'all kind of took two of my people out because, Biggie, really more so Biggie than Tupac.
No, you can do whatever you want.
All right. Well, amen. So Biggie, Jay-Z, I'm very Brooklyn. Y'all know that. So Biggie, Jay-Z, Lil' Kim, right? Not that I was able to listen to her when I was a kid because it was extremely ratchet.
Look, you still lying to your mama. Continue.
She's mommy. I love you. She's just 1,000% Brooklyn.
I think she's incredible too.
Huh?
I think she's incredible.
She's really incredible.
She brought me into puberty. Continue.
Wow.
Oh.
I wasn't.
She did.
Anyway, Queen Latifah.
We're around the same age. Come on, man.
Queen Latifah, who you calling them? Like, and Lauryn Hill, which I listen to her all the daggone time. Like, I desire to do a record where I am singing and rapping, like personally. So I love Lauryn Hill. I love that she is versatile and that, like you said, She did this Miss Education Lauryn Hill all these years ago, and it is still one of the greatest albums of all time.
Yeah, she robbed us. She robbed us. She robbed us. Yes.
Because
she stopped making music.
Album, she did.
She did. It didn't have no beats in it. Like 50 Cent said. Then she made an album with no beats. Yeah, she stopped rapping.
she was in her bag. She was in her acoustic field.
Oh my God. Listen,
anyway,
man.
Listen, we are over time, and we had a great time.
What are you trying to say that there ain't no such thing as halfway crooks? Talking about audience participation.
Oh, Mobb Deep. If we talk about groups, Mobb Deep would be in there for me. NWA would have to be in there for me. I mean, it's the Dog Pound. I'm a West Coast Oakland cat, so like Dog Pound. A lot of shit that I shouldn't have been listening to, but I was. And yeah, man.
David's out here supporting D12.
I like D12 too. So that's Go ahead.
Slum Village.
Top 5. She said, "I'm embarrassed to say Lil Kim, Fugees, Method Man, Biggie, and Nas." So shout out
Who
to
said
you.
that?
No, they ain't embarrassing. That's a bad top 5.
All right, it's time for us to go. Clearly, we needed to do a sequel of Hip Hop 50. So thank you so much for tuning into the South Star Classroom. Please do not forget to follow us on Instagram at the South Star Classroom. And the links are always in the bio for our shows. We are here every single Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Jubilee. That's Omar. That's Dave. That's Charles. And we are out. Peace.
Peace out.